वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचानूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णो वन्दे जगद्गुरुं श्रीकृष्णो वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्. Pranams from Dr. R.J. Kalpana. Welcome to the study of the Bhagavad Gita. In this session, we will continue to study Chapter 2, Sankhyayoga, or the Yoga of Knowledge. Shloka 16, Krishna says, "The unreal has no existence, and the real never ceases to be. The reality of both has thus been perceived by the seers of truth." And the question we ask ourselves is, what is real and what is unreal? What is this unreal that has no existence? And what is this real that never ceases to be? So, to illustrate the two words, there is a beautiful story. Once Narada, the celestial sage, approaches Vishnu in Vaikuntham, and he asks Vishnu, "What is this thing called Maya? What is this thing they say is a world of illusion?" And Vishnu smiles and says, "Narada, can you get me a glass of water, please?" And Narada turns to get a glass of water, and he finds himself shipwrecked on an ocean on planet Earth. A passing merchant ship sees him struggling to survive in the sea and rescues him. Narada apprentices with the merchant, falls in love with the merchant's daughter, gets married, takes over the merchant's business, has children of his own, passes on the reins of the business to his children. His wife passes away, and at the end of his life, Narada finds himself living in a cottage in the far end of his estate. In the evening, there is a knock on the door, and when Narada opens the door, Vishnu is standing on his doorstep, and he smiles and asks, "What took you so long, Narada? I only asked for a glass of water." And in that moment, Narada recalls everything that has happened to him. Narada recalls that he was a celestial sage, and he had approached Vishnu to inquire about what is unreal and what is real. And then he experiences the unreal in a world of illusion when he is caught in this dimension of matter. And this is what is unreal, which has no existence beyond this dimension. It is a constant reminder for us that we are not human beings living a spiritual life. We are spiritual beings living a human life. And therefore, it behoves us to well remember the shloka where the unreal has no existence, says Krishna, and the real, the soul, never ceases to be. And for the seers of truth, those who have disciplined themselves and ardently searched for the difference between what is real and what is unreal, for those seers of truth, for those jnana yogis, the reality of both has been perceptible. Shloka 17. Know that alone to be imperishable, which pervades this universe, for no one has power to destroy this indestructible universe. And so here Krishna says that it is that soul, that cosmic energy, that divine principle which pervades the entire universe. For no one has the power to destroy this indestructible substance. And this indestructible substance, which is imperishable, is the eternal nature of the soul, which is pervaded by the divine. It is that causal body that is present within every sentient being, that divine principle, that Antaryamin that we call in Upanishads. Shloka 18. All these bodies pertaining to the imperishable, indefinable and eternal soul are spoken of as perishable. Therefore, Arjuna, fight. So these gross physical bodies that we have, that pertain to the eternal soul, are perishable. What we are attached to is merely a physical body which is perishable. We are rarely attached to the eternal nature of the soul, because if we were attached to that soul, then we would neither grieve over the dead or the living, because we understand that that soul is eternal. Shloka 19. They are both ignorant, he who knows the soul to be capable of killing, and he who takes it was killed. For verily the soul neither kills nor is killed. And Krishna here talks about the causal body or the soul, which is imperishable, which is eternal. And if that person thinks that to kill a physical body is to kill the soul, is an ignorant one. For how can we terminate the eternal? It is timeless. Shloka 20. The soul is never born nor dies, nor does it become only after being born. For it is unborn, eternal, everlasting and ancient. Even though the body is slain, the soul is not. So here Krishna tells us that that soul is not subject to the cycle of life and death, because it is never born, nor does it ever die. nor does it only come into existence merely because there is a physical life form, a physical birth, because it is unborn, it is eternal, it has ever been so, it is everlasting, and most important of all, it is ancient, it is primeval in its essence, from the beginning of time, from before even the beginning of time. And even though the physical body disintegrates, the soul does not. 21. Arjuna, the man who knows the soul to be imperishable, eternal, and free from birth to decay, how and whom will he cause to be killed? How and whom will he kill? In this shloka, Krishna, who has just introduced us to the eternal nature of the soul, now asks the question, knowing the true essence of that soul to be eternal and imperishable, how can we ever think that we can be the cause of anyone's death, or that we can kill anyone? Oftentimes, when we lose a near and dear one, oftentimes a soldier on the battlefield might have to take a decision to kill an enemy. The after effects will always be there on the ordinary mind, that somehow we have been the cause of death and we have killed. But what is it that we have killed? What is it that we have caused to kill? Because our attachment is to the soul, not to a physical body. The physical body is subject to decay and ruin. That is the law of matter. That is the law of this dimension that we are all born into. Shloka 22. As a man shedding worn-out garments takes other new ones, likewise the embodied soul, casting off worn-out bodies, enters into others which are new. And here Krishna explains the cycle of birth and death. The soul takes on new physical forms as long as it has samskaras. We all come into this world carrying a little suitcase of memories, of impressions, of samskaras. And as long as that suitcase is not emptied of its samskaras, we are subject to birth and death. And it is as simple as that. We all have what the Upanishads call prarabdha karma, the sum total of samskaras that we have generated, accumulated, accrued in all our past lives. And therefore that keeps the cycle of birth and death ever going, ever functional. And so he's compared it to that of wearing new garments, of wearing new clothes. As the old ones decay and fall off, they get torn, stained, we wear new clothes. Similarly, the soul takes on new physical forms when the old physical forms are subject to decay. Shloka 23. Nainam chidanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledayantyapo, na shoshayati marutaha. Weapons cannot cut it, nor can fire burn it. The water cannot wet it, nor can wind dry it. This is a very important shloka, and it is oft quoted, where it indicates that the soul can never be touched by the elements of nature. The earth, the wind, the fire, the water, and space. It is beyond the material dimension, and it can never be subject to the laws of the material dimension. Shloka 24. For this soul is incapable of being cut. It is proof against fire, impervious to water, and undryable as well. This soul is eternal, omnipresent, immovable, constant, and everlasting. Because it is not subject to the elements of the earth dimension, elements of the material dimension of matter, the soul is eternal. It is constant. And it is ever present. 25. This soul is unmanifest, it is unthinkable, and it is spoken of as immutable. Therefore, knowing this as such, you should not grieve. Knowing the true nature of the soul, which is eternal, which is spoken of as being immutable, meaning it cannot be subject to the laws of nature. It cannot be mutated. It is immutable. It is unmanifest. It doesn't merely manifest while coming into contact with nature. And it is unthinkable. It is that which cannot be perceived by the mind. It can only be perceived by the heart. And it is this soul that is eternal. And knowing this, one should not grieve. 26. And Arjuna, if you should suppose this soul to be subject to constant birth and death, even then you should not grieve like this. And Krishna admonishes Arjuna once again and says that even if you think this eternal soul is subject to constant birth and death, even then, being a warrior, you should not grieve. You should stand up and do your duty. 27. For in that case, death is certain for the born, and rebirth is inevitable for the dead. You should not therefore grieve over the inevitable. And so here Krishna explains why one should not grieve. because for those who are born in this earth plane, death is inevitable, and for those who have not walked on the path of spirituality, who have not consciously affected a discipline to get them nearer to the goal of the divine, rebirth is inevitable because they still have their suitcase of samskaras that they are carrying around, and therefore do not grieve over that which is inevitable. Those who are born must die, and those who die must be reborn. 28. Arjuna, before birth beings are not manifest to our human senses. At death they return to the unmanifest again. They are manifest only in the interim between birth and death. What occasion then for lamentation? So here Krishna talks about the physical form, right? Before birth, the beings are not manifest to our human senses. Our human senses, which are controlled by the 5 elements, the Panchabhutas, the Panchendriyas, are 5 senses. The soul is not perceivable, and therefore it is not manifest. It's only when they come into contact with the earth dimension that they are born, they acquire a physical body, and only then are they manifest. However briefly, they are manifest to the human senses. And at death, they retire back into the world of the unmanifest. So this manifestation that takes place of the physical body is a brief interim between birth and death, the cycle of birth and death, right? They are manifest only in the interim between birth and death. Only in that short time period they take on a physical body, that they are manifest to the human senses. The human senses can perceive them, can feel them, touch them, talk to them, feel them. So what occasion is there for all this lamentation? This existence in the material world is like a dream. And it's only during the dream that the dreamer has a semblance of relation with it. In Mahabharata, Vidura once expresses a very similar sentiment where he says, "Those whom you now regard to be your own came from an unseen state, that is, before birth they were unmanifest, and they have become unmanifest again. Therefore, in reality, neither are they yours, nor are you theirs. What is the occasion then for this lamentation?" In Kathopanishad also, the very same point is taught. That truth, the truth about the soul, which many are not privileged even to hear, and which though heard cannot be known in reality by many, for the expounder of it also is marvelous. The man of exceptional parts succeeding in realizing it is also very rare. And its knower also is a marvelous individual instructed by an exceptionally able and proficient teacher. Because here the teacher, the thought, and also and the exceptional nature of both to be able to explain a concept which is beyond the worlds of our senses, which is beyond the world of a material dimension. And the thought, the student who can grasp such a tenuous subject and understand it in its depth, is considered to be quite marvelous. Shloka 30. Arjuna, this soul dwelling in the bodies of all can never be slain. Therefore, you should not mourn for anyone. And so here, Krishna says that it is this soul, this eternal divine principle that exists in all these human bodies. They can never be slain. And therefore, you should not mourn for anyone. And so we come to the end of this session. And we will continue in our next session. Om Yogesham Satchidanandam Vasudevam Rajapriyam Dharma Samstapakam Veeram Krishno Vande Jagat Gurum Shri Krishno Vande Jagat Gurum. Om Shri Krishnarpanamastu.